Hello friends of model trains, and welcome to another video in our Digital for Beginners series. In today's video, we're going to control a locomotive using the Z21 app. We have a tab here called Railway Vehicles, using which you can create new vehicles and set up locomotives in the app. Here you can see that a demo system complete with vehicles has been pre-installed at the first station. Vehicles you don't require can simply be removed using the swipe function. However, because we actually want to remove all the vehicles, you can also just create a new system where the complete layout is empty. To do this, switch to Systems and add an empty system using the plus symbol. Now we have to give the system a name. In this case, we'll call it Test. For the signal box type, you should take the schematic signal box. This is the latest status of our technology, and it's actually the easiest to set up, but we'll get to that later on. So give the system a name, select schematic for the signal box type, and then add the system. Then you'll see a check symbol, which means that the app has automatically selected our new system. If you now go to Railway Vehicles, then you'll see that no vehicles are represented. However, we want to control some vehicles. For this, we have the plus symbol, and this gives us several possibilities. First, there is the locomotive database for all Roco and Fleischmann locomotives with sound from the past decade. They are represented in this database. If you're connected to the internet, you can enter the locomotive article number here. Then the locomotive is shown, and you just tap on it and then click on Create Vehicle here. Now you can see that the locomotive has been added with an image and a caption. The tab functions can be used to show you all the functions a locomotive has. This is all set up Xworks. Next, we want to add a locomotive from the start set. Again, we search for it via the locomotive database. This is the article number of the start set. As we can see, there are no entries here. Like I said before, the database only contains locomotives with sound. The set features a digital locomotive, so we have to set this up manually. This can also be done via the plus symbol under the item Locomotives. Now you can see that we have created a new locomotive. Of course, we now have to change the locomotive name. In this case, we have the BR140. You can add a photo here. You have several options. You can use example images, meaning a handful of images which are already in the app, or photo library, where all the images from the device are shown. You could, for example, download the image from the manufacturer's website, or you can use the device camera and photograph your own locomotive. To do this, align the locomotive appropriately for the device. It's not so easy when you're making a video. For that reason, we'll go back and look to see if we can find a similar locomotive in the example images. We can just take this example image. Next, we state the address. In our case, our basic locomotive still has the address 3 as we didn't change it. We can enter the name of the locomotive here. We can add categories. In this way, we can create a rapid selection method. In particular, if we have a lot of locomotives, by deleting the new category text over the pen symbol and renaming it Electric Locomotives, for example. By tapping the name, you have now added the locomotive to this category. This is how you can add categories for each locomotives, which makes it quicker to find one particular one amongst the many displayed in the locomotive menu. Active means that the locomotive should either only be in my database or that it can also be used for control purposes. We want to use the locomotive for control purposes, so we'll leave it set to active. Crane. If you have one of our new digital cranes and activate this item, 2 analog joysticks will be shown in the control menu so that you can control your crane in a way even more similar to the prototype. Speed display is not a real km/h value, but rather a calculated speed. In the lower box, you can make further entries as required. For example, the Railway Administration, locomotive, length, weight of model, and weight of original. Whatever you like, you can refine your statistics here. At the moment, there's nothing listed under the item Functions. Here you can select which functions the locomotive has. In our case, it's light, and here is the symbol image for the light function. At the top here, you can make further selections. Is it a switch? The light should be on permanently. Is it a button for a whistle, for example? Or you can also set a switching time, for example on an electric coupling, so that it couples for 2 seconds and then uncouples again. In addition, you can determine which function key stands for which function. In our case, it's F0 for light. You can also add a brief description by giving the function another name. In this case, you could add that it's a light. Then the whole thing has a designation. For the next function, tap on the next tab. Here you can add sound if you have a sound locomotive and store it, for example, on function key F1. If you have a function in a place you don't like, simply move it by tapping on the function. Here at the top you can see 3 tabs, so that you can arrange up to 28 functions plus light, so a total of 29 functions. Therefore, you can simply drag the function up if you'd like to have it on page 2. In this way, you can relocate and edit the functions individually. Now we'll switch back to the BR95. In this case, it has address 7. Therefore, it's possible to tell the app that the locomotive on address 7 should be controlled. Again, you can select a category here. In this case, we'll make a new category. To do this, the old name has to be deleted and steam locomotive entered for this model. By tapping on it, you can add the locomotive to the appropriate category. You can see that the locomotive name, the image, and also here in part the locomotive information are already entered ex-works. When you go to Functions, you will see that the locomotive default settings already feature a lot of equipment and functions. If you now select Whistle, for example, you'll see that this is also defined as a key. If you want to have a function which is further back moved forwards, but you don't want to reprogram anything in the locomotive decoder, then hold down the respective function and drag it, for example, to the top of the driver's cab lighting where you want it. If, for example, the air pump isn't required here, you can drag the driver's cab lighting from function F11 to the first page and thus swap its position with air pump. That's how you adapt the function keys individually. We also have the item Driver's Cabs. This feature pre-configured driver's cabs for several vehicles. Unfortunately, it doesn't show ours, therefore as an example, we'll select the driver's cab for the BR52 in order to show the menu and what happens once you've selected a driver's cab for the locomotive. Now we'll switch back into the control menu and control our models on our system. Once we get back to the drive menu, we have the following selection options at the bottom here. Via the item locomotives, via this rectangular window, we can see all the locomotives which have been set up. And at the top, via categories, we can, for example, have only steam locomotives or only electronic locomotives shown to us. That's a relatively quick way to filter the locomotives. Now we want to select the steam locomotive and can only see steam locomotives in the selection window. Using the driver's cab function, you can open the previously selected steam locomotive driver's cab. As you can see, it looks as though you're in an original steam engine. Now you just have to know a little bit about steam locomotives to know where you can do what. You can tap here and turn the lever accordingly. In case of queries, there are a couple of hints here. you can view the PDF for the respective driver's cab. In there, you'll find explanations as to which function stands for which lever or selection wheel. In principle, you can control the locomotive just as though you were standing in the original. It's fun to do. For system operation, however, this usually gets a bit too complicated, as you end up concentrating on the driver's cab in the app more than on the model, but it's up to you. You can find another function under Railway Vehicles. You can sort the vehicles via the pen symbol. You can then sort them according to the locomotive address or the class, with the steam locomotives listed first. Just tap on the pen symbol and then you can drag and drop each individual locomotive. Once you're ready, click on Completed. If you have clicked too much by mistake and added locomotives you didn't want, simply tap the locomotive in question and swipe to the left. This deletes it from the locomotive list. Right, now we can try out the locomotive on the system by driving it. As you can see here, the screen on the tablet is now divided into two. That means that you can control two locomotives at once. In this way, you can have one locomotive drive in one direction and the other one in another, or in the same direction but on a different track. You can control two locomotives directly and select between locomotive and signal box. In the next video, you will see what you can do with the signal box and how the turnouts can be switched digitally.